Hey, this is Shilpa Bhoraskar here. The name of my presentation is How to Analyze and Successfully Unlock Imponderable, Multi-Layered, Challenging Cases. Now, what is relevant to you? I also teach and mentor leading CAM and homeopathic practitioners unlock challenging complex cases using homeopathy. So we have about 1,000 such cases on my Argentum mentoring portal that have been submitted since about 2008. Now, the interesting part, what we've learned through these cases is that good prescriptions, well-indicated prescriptions, do not necessarily work the way we want them to work. So what we've been able to do is, or help these clients, is identify the exact blocks that stop our favorite remedies from working and strategically remove these blocks. So we have all these transformative healing journeys that have been documented on the website, and we have cases with about 10 years of follow-ups, cases that have unfolded where we have removed the blocks and they have actually got the potential of homeopathy that they deserve. So what I'm teaching you today has been clinically proven to work in almost every type of patient. We have patients that come with what I call at stage 1, which is where they present with common disease-specific symptoms or diagnostic symptoms, to cases at stage 4, where they come with extremely idiosyncratic, rare, strange symptoms. Some of these symptoms might not be found in our books or repertories. We have patients that, they come with every type of condition, from inflammation and functional conditions to infectious, hormonal, metabolic, autoimmune. They could come with gross pathologies and multisystemic conditions. And they also work with every type of remedy, remedies made from plants, from animals, from minerals. We've used fungi, nosodes, sarcodes, and even imponderables, and potencies across a range of conditions, from mother tinctures to decimal scales, centesimal scales, LM potencies, and even Fibonacci potencies. So what is relevant to you is that you are here for getting results, in your multi-layered stuck cases, and you're not just here about me. And so let's get started with that. So here's what I've planned that you will learn during this presentation. One is that this presentation is built around the stages formula. This is my specific formula for unfolding complex, multi-layered autoimmune cases that I'm going to share with you today. By the time we are done, you will be literally able to first identify, analyze, and prescribe the imponderable group of remedies. That's the group of remedies that I'm going to really focus on in today's presentation. It will ensure you can confidently use the best potential of this lesser known yet very powerful group of remedies in our Materia Medica. The second thing that I plan is that you will learn the best strategies to unfold your stuck cases where your well-indicated remedies are not working well. So the idea is that you can fast track the resolution process in your patients. You can unfold your patient in the right direction, and you don't waste time. You avoid going around in circles, you avoid throwing remedies in desperation, and you avoid losing valuable time, your time and your patient's time. The third thing that we're going to learn is I'm going to help you identify and remove different blocks that emerge during the treatment process of any multi-layered, multi-miasmatic case. So this helps your patient develop the confidence in you. Your patient is inspired to come back to you for every follow-up and complete the healing journey that they deserve and that you deserve. So I promise you're going to really enjoy this. So how is this different? How is this presentation different from most presentations that you will see? One is, what I'm going to talk today is there is no theory in this. Everything that I've learned and we've learned is through real life implementation of this process, through about tens of thousands of stagnated and stuck cases that I've seen in my practice and I've helped in my students' practices. So we're going to look at a case study, an actual case study of a stuck autoimmune thyroiditis case with atrial fibrillation, where well-indicated approaches and similimums by good homeopaths haven't worked. And we're going to unblock and we're going to move our patients dramatically forward so that our favorite approaches and remedies can start working again, because we have removed the blockages that actually stop these remedies from working. Now, remember, any practitioner can resolve a single disease state, which with a single similimum, right? But when you have multiple disease states, when you have different systems being affected, you have a complex mesh of different layers coming together, complex mesh of different miasms through time stuck together, they cannot be covered with one remedy. Why? Because there are a series of suppressions that have created these blocks and these independent pathological states. People try and compare it to layers of onion and how they have been formed through time. However, I actually give an analogy of a Play-Doh at the end of a child's game, and you see these different colors, and these are different multiple layers and disease states that have been superimposed on each other. So it's hard to actually get them out. It's not concentric circles that we think of. These, if you remove the yellow and then you can see the blue beneath, and you remove the blue and sometimes you can see the yellow beneath. And these are the layers that have been enmeshed together in this particular form. And you cannot form one single totality, because there is no single totality. You just have to focus on one layer and one predominant color at a time. So that's the idea. You strategically target one dominant state and you use a series of remedies to unfold and peel the other emerging layers as and when they come, as and when the body unfolds and shows you what's next coming up, right? So this is where most of your patients will present to you in your clinics today. We have contemporary practices are all about such patients with complex cases that are stuck, enmeshed, and that's how they present to you. They've taken so many therapies, they've taken tons of conventional medications, they've been hospitalized, and that's when they come to you as a last resort, right? So unless you're a hobbyist homeopath or you're simply dipping your toes in water, this is what contemporary practice that uses homeopathy lives and dies by. And this is why it's very relevant for you. But why is it critical today that you learn about these approaches? So you see, we're bombarded with conflict information. We see all these one remedy seminar cases, or we see these remedies, one remedy miracle cases in our journals. And, that creates immense frustration, overwhelm, and confusion, especially new practitioners. And don't get me wrong, I've been there too. So most beginners practitioners will then simply try and stick with one approach that makes sense to them because it's too confusing. And when that does not work, because that one approach is obviously not going to work in your complex cases, and then all they see are lots of stuck cases. They're going around in circles, they're throwing remedies in desperation, patients are repelled, patients are giving up. And what I've found is there is no good or bad approach. Every approach is suited to and works in one specific type of patient and their expressions and their disease states. And what we are going to do today is fix that, so you know exactly what to do and how to get the best potential of homeopathy for your clients. Now, before we move forward, I have a confession to make, right? I have advantage over most when I started my practice. I went to a premium medical school in India. I was training under some of the best homeopathic teachers on earth, arguably in my medical school, right in our hospital clinics. And so you would think, I've already had a head start over most people to unblock my stuck cases right from the day I started practice, right? You see, I have had over 10,000 challenging cases in the last 25 years of my practice. But 80% of my success in those complex cases is not due to the approach I learned in my Mumbai medical school or in my clinics. I know it's shocking, but it's true. In my second year of practice, I moved to a rural charity clinic. Now, this was away from Mumbai. It was about 200 kilometers away from Mumbai. This was where my partner and I decided to settle. And in those clinics, I was a primary health physician, and all I saw were diagnostic, pathological, or surgical conditions. Conventional medicine was not an option because they couldn't afford it. It could take away the life savings if they actually went to a hospital. The problem was my favorite approach failed miserably in these people. I was used to using my classical approaches, my Kenyan approaches, and they were just not working in these patients. And I tried to get in touch with my Mumbai mentors, but they were of no help because they were not seeing the types of cases in these dire conditions, in their urban clinics, right? So to say that I was completely overwhelmed would be an understatement. I had two options. I could either abandon this clinic and just forget about using homeopathy for such clinics at the grassroots, or I could just figure it out and find answers for these people. I decided to take the hard road and figure it out because deeply I knew there were homeopaths in the past that worked with such cases, worked with such surgical cases, say cases that I could send to a conventional doctor if I was in my Mumbai clinic. That was the most life-changing decision of my homeopathic journey. So what I did was I modeled key old masters approaches who worked especially with pathological and surgical cases. People like Bonninghausen, Boger, Clark, Burnett. I started reading their lesser writings. I started studying their case studies, actual case studies, and what exact approach, what type of remedies, what type of potencies they were using. And that was when I created the stages template based on my experiences with those people. And slowly I started realizing there was some sort of a pattern, a formula coming up on how I could bridge the gaps. I started classifying cases based on how they presented, to what sort of approaches, what sort of remedies, what sort of potencies were working for them. And I started putting together some missing pieces of the homeopathic puzzle that I never learned in my school, in my medical school. And this template then became a game changer for me because I could now pick the right approach for the right patient. And suddenly, the value of every approach I had been exposed to became absolutely crystal clear. And it was a light bulb moment for me. I just realized, maybe this is the secret key to success of homeopathy, to actually choose the approach that works at the exact stage of my patient. And I realized the reason for failure in my clinic. I realized that the approaches I was using was not suited to their needs. I was using stage 3 and 4 approaches, but these patients were at stage 1. I needed to use stage 1 approaches, which I never learned in my school. And that changed the trajectory of my success in these challenging, complex cases. And the second year, my clinical success took a huge leap. And I could help about 1,000 farmer families in that entire year. And I could actually gain my confidence back. So the question is, how can you do that? How can you learn the formula behind the stages template? How can you build a ladder of cure? That is what Burnett calls this. When you're working with such pathological cases, how can you break through every step? And how can you clinically, heal people and complete these healing journeys in your clients, in your everyday practices? And this is what we are going to do. And I'm going to demonstrate this to you through this case of autoimmune thyroiditis. So this lady, she's a 54-year-old and she's a conventional doctor from Romania. So she came to me for the very first time on 7/2022. Now she's been suffering from hypothyroidism. She's been diagnosed with hypothyroidism since about 22 years. These were her test results. She's chronic autoimmune thyroiditis. Her T4 is 50. Normal is about 10 to 19. Her TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, is 0.05, which is again very low. She has antibodies against thyroid peroxidase, and she has other high antibodies, TSG receptor antibodies, and ATPO. So she spoke in Romanian language. Her daughter was the translator, and this is how the consultation went. So she suffered from these palpitations, this tachycardia, and extrasystoles or flares of unsustainable atrial tachycardia. 10 days ago, just before she saw me, she's had this paroxysmal atrial fibrillation. Her ventricular rate went very high, and she had nausea, dizziness, diarrhea, and high blood pressure. So she's on antithyroid drugs, thiamazole 50 milligrams a day, and on antihypertensives, metoprolol 25 milligrams a day. So this is the state that she comes to me with. Obviously, with hyperthyroidism, she has all these heart conditions and tachycardia as a part of that whole syndrome. So before her first consult, she sent me this long list of past and present complaints through a questionnaire. So these are some of the important things that I found from that questionnaire that I've put it here. She's had a history of recurrent pharyngeal and tonsillar infections. She's had hepatitis at 14 years of age, sinusitis since about 14 years. She had measles during the pregnancy of her first daughter. She had mumps at age of 30. Again, she had lots of dental issues, periodontosis, frequent abscesses. She's lost her teeth completely and has total dental prosthesis since about 4 years because the teeth were damaged. She's in menopause right now, but she suffered from menstrual issues all her life, metorrhagia, irregular menstruation. She had cysts, candida, lumbago since about 5 years now. She's severe right sciatica pains, which lasts for about a month whenever it comes, with neuralgia. She's had one 4 months ago. Then we have a family history, really strong family history. Her maternal grandfather had prostate adenoma and lung infections in the last years of his life. He's also had oscillating hypertension. Her maternal grandmother had ischemic heart disease, atrial hypertension, fibrillation, stroke, and she died after that. So very strong history from her mother's side, and she's suffering from similar states. Her father died of gastric cancer. Her mother also had oscillating arterial hypertension, ischemic mitral regurgitation, nervous overload, neurosis when she was young. So we have a very strong family history from her mother's side with whatever conditions that she's suffering from. And she's been to a lot of homeopaths. She strongly believes in homeopathy, and she's seen some really good homeopaths across the globe, and she's been prescribed some really well-indicated remedies. But the problem is nothing holds. So when she came to me, I asked her what she wanted, and she said, I want to taper off these thyroid drugs. That's what she wrote in the questionnaire. So this is the background information as I saw her for the first time. So now the daughter is translating everything the mother is saying. And she speaks slowly and really clearly, and she speaks with a lot of intentions. She said she has this sudden atrial fibrillation episode about 10 days ago, and that really got her into panic. She's had extra systoles, the pulse was 150, and then it started shooting up, overfullness in the chest. She had a lot of pressure in her lungs. She was dizzy, nauseous, and then she said she had some static electricity-like sensations in some places in her chest. She felt as if her heart was pulled out of her chest. She couldn't stand still. There was this inner restlessness and she needed to move. Now, she's been to homeopaths. She understands homeopathy, so she's giving me some important symptoms here. She takes homeopathic digitalis, but then she started getting worse, so she took some beta blockers and lycopus. That's the homeopathic remedy. It helped to some extent. And then she started talking about other things. She said, I have excessive sensitivity to wind, to cold drafts. I get rhinopharyngitis on the right side. This is a recurrent thing. I'm also very sensitive to phases of the moon, to weather changes, to radiation. I'm also sensitive to people around me and their moods. And then she said, I'm sensitive to homeopathics as well. I can only tolerate low potencies up to 30C. High potencies make her worse. So I asked her, tell me more about what happened when that thyroid issues and the heart issues came up. And she said, when the thyroid is decompensated, I feel the thyroid is growing and there is a lot of pressure from within. And then she starts, making these hand gestures. And she says, I feel the need to stop that growth with counter pressure. I need external pressure. I tie a scarf around my neck, but I feel it opposes the thyroid enlargement. So that is what she does to feel better. And then she says, I need my clothes very tight when I lose my weight, because she's losing weight in a hypothyroid state. She says, I need something to contain me. My clothes give me shape, and I feel that I have a shape. Because when I'm losing my weight, I feel I'm shrinking, I'm melting. I feel I'm gradually disappearing. I'm not good enough to explain what I mean, because she realizes she's saying things that she doesn't understand, and she felt I couldn't understand. So she says, my modality is all very unclear and variable. I have different sensations, they start replacing one another. So at this point, it's very interesting, what was going on behind, at the back of my mind and my thought process. She didn't know what to do next, right? She didn't know what else to tell me about. She's had this 20 pages of questionnaire. She's had, all these reports and investigations that she sent me. She's, giving me all these important symptoms. And then she says, there's not more I can say about this. What do you do now at this point? This is what's going on at the back of my mind. So now, based on the stages template, this is a case at stage 4. And why is that? Because she's talking about really very weird, peculiar sensations. She's talking about her core experiences that are beyond the mind and the body. She's talking about static electricity-like changes. She's talking about the thyroid growing and the clothes containing. So a lot of energetic expressions and things that she cannot explain verbally because they are so weird. And she's using a lot of hand gestures. And this is when I decide to use the source approach in her, because this is an approach at stage 4, which I've classified into, which taps into the subconsciousness and the unconsciousness, because that is where she is. We have to directly go and match her at that level, not really go and start, using our classical approaches or using at a different stage, right? So this is what I decide to do, and that's how I change gears here, all right? So I directly ask her about her dreams, because now she cannot speak about her day-to-day sensations. Let's go and find what's in the subconscious. And then suddenly she lights up and she says, I have floating dreams. I had some 3 months ago and they have been repeated twice. And she says, I float at low altitudes. it is similar to a lack of gravity. So it's not like a bird flying. It is like there is no gravity and I'm just rising up. I float close to the ground or I rise higher, but I'm escaping some form of danger when I go up, or I need to reach a place to escape some danger. So she speaks about one powerful dream that she has. She was in a lodge house in the woods, and she realized at some places in that house there was no gravity. And it was a bit bizarre. She was afraid. And she says, I'm lifted from the ground at those places and I go down again at other places, depending on how the gravity is, around that. And she's trying to warn others not to go into those places where there is no gravity. And then she goes inside a room, and then there is a growing black hole in the ground. And she says, I get very scared. I tried to jump over that hole, but I started floating above it. I managed to go over the hole, but I was really, really scared. So I asked her, have you actually been connected with any such experiences in your past as a child growing up? And she says, I was afraid of holes as a child. On the street, when there are dark holes in the ground, some drainage or even toilet holes, I'm very scared of those holes. And she says, I had past dreams of floating. It was like, she saw big bodies of water spreading in all directions. She's very scared. And she says, I have to float over it. And I won't be able to control my floating. That's my fear. And I might fall in that water. Then there are fear of earthquake. She says that's very big. She's been through an earthquake, and she says, when that earth started to shake, I felt a rotating sensation inside my body. I felt as if I was being pulled in the ground. I could not go up. I was attracted to the ground. So she was trying her level best to float, but she was being pulled towards the ground. And then she says, before an earthquake, I get this lead-like sensation, very heavy sensation in my body. I cannot get out of the bed. Something's pulling me down. I'm very exhausted. And then other times when the clouds are low, when there is fog or mist, she says, I feel a huge weight on my body. I can hardly get out of bed. Same feeling she had during atrial fibrillation. When she had that episode 10 days ago, she said, when my thyroid is decompensated, I feel this heaviness in my body as if I'm pulled and I need to move. That's the restlessness she speaks about. And she connects it for us beautifully now when she's speaking about the dream and the sensation about heaviness. She says it's a disaster state. I'm depressed. So now I ask her about her hobbies and interests. Remember, we have real life dreams, and then these are for me virtual dreams, where you ask about, which can also help us understand the core of their state at stage 4. So she says, I'm passionate about science fiction. I love Star Trek. Everything in that, episode is utopian. And she says humanity will never reach that level of wisdom. And then she suddenly starts speaking about anger, about what's happening in the world. She says, I'm an internal medical doctor, but I work with my patients to reduce their conventional medicines. I inspire a lot of trust in my patients. But then she's rejected by the general medical community because for her, she's a weirdo. And then she speaks about the biggest shock in her life was when her father died. And she's written about this in a questionnaire. She says she had gastric cancer, and I felt very guilty that I was not able to save him with natural medicine and homeopathy. And she says, I think my thyroid disease, my issue was triggered by that episode. And this was years back when her father died, 22 years back. Now, look at what's happening here. She's now talking about her emotions, about her shock, her guilt, and she's going into the emotional state, which is about, which is stage 3. And we don't want her to go there because she's at stage 4 and it's great, and we help her just remain at that stage because otherwise we'll be going around in circles, right? So I quickly ask her, how do you cope? When you ask her the coping mechanism in those situations, at stage 4, we're looking at miasms. So she says, I constantly look for more and more solutions. I fight with all my force to bring balance. And this is what she's talking about, how she copes with her disease state. So she says, I have moments of despair, but I'm convinced that homeopathy is the best solution for me. But she says, I don't think the right remedy has been found for me. So she's seen a lot of homeopaths, some leading practitioners in the world, and she's been taking a lot of homeopathics as well. So she took Natramure 10 days ago. 2 weeks before that, she's taken Thyroidinum 30C. She's taken Thuya in the past. Radium brome was prescribed to her by a homeopath. Cocculus, nitric acid. There's a huge list, right? So, and these are good remedies. They've been well indicated for her. They've never really touched her at that level. So at this point, I again ask my patients, what is it that they want? Because now they are at stage 4, she is at stage 4, and I realize that, the wants are different than, when she was talking about the questionnaire, because at stage 4, a want is different. And she says, I want to balance my emotions. I want to be more calmer. I want to worry less. I want to prevent these relapses of hypothyroid decompensation. But beyond that, I want to age beautifully, prevent my physical degradation, my degenerative disease. I want to resume sports and dance. So this is what she loved doing. I want to hike in the mountains, but I don't have any strength to do this anymore. And then she says, I want to teach young doctors about alternative natural medical methods, which I apply in daily life. I know I want homeopathy to be taught at my university at a postgraduate level. And then she says, I'm an idealist. I could change the world. To teach others about universe and life. So there are things that are much more than matter. But now I can't. She says she used to be a guest speaker at TV shows in Romania. She spoke about alternative medical treatments many years before. And she says, I cannot do that anymore. It's very tiring. Because along with my words, a lot of energy goes out of me when I speak. My words convey a lot of energy. My throat chakra is my biggest problem. It consumes me. So you can see she's again speaking about the energy that she's radiating when she's speaking about. And so that was the case for me. That was the whole process. And at this point, I decided to make the analysis. Yeah. So this is what I have in front of me. She has these very weird sensations, which are very, very peculiar. Things are dangerous, things are serious, things are bizarre. And then she is being pulled in there. There is a heaviness. And there is also shrinking and melting along with that heaviness. And then she is gradually disappearing. She's not contained. There is no shape. And the powerful energy goes out of me. My throat chakra consumes me. Can you see? This is a very interesting phenomena that she's speaking. There's not one sensation. There is a process of sensations happening here, all at the energetic level. And then there is floating. There is no gravity. And there is a black hole. Can you see? She's touched the source here. This whole process is the phenomena of the black hole. This is the source of the remedy. It is an imponderable. It's sourced from the cosmos. There is this dark, deep, destructive force that engulfs the universe, which is the black hole. And look at the source words for imponderables from the cosmos that she uses. I'm sensitive to energy of others. I'm influenced by other people's energy. The clouds are heavy. I'm sensitive to radiation. I'm pulled towards the earth by earthquakes. I'm sensitive to phases of the moon. Unstoppable power. So we have a proving of the black hole. This is nearest black hole to the Earth, Cygnus X1, Lux Foraminus Nigris. It was proved by the Northwestern Academy of Homeopathy by Master Prover Jason Eric in September 2010. There is a beautiful proving given on this site for people who are interested. I highly recommend getting it. And these are the themes that came up in the proving. There is impending doom, sadness, depression, grief. The vulnerable, they feel exposed, and the panic. And there is this pulling in sensation, this inward drawn compression, contraction, because the star is collapsing. Remember? It's shrinking. And how beautifully that comes up in the provings. There is heavy weighted denseness. Things are attracted to it, drawn to it. And on the other hand, is the swimming, the flying, the floating, the zero gravity, the soaring like birds. And physically, what they have found is there is heightened senses, awareness, flashes of heat, and difficult respiration. So not a lot of information at the physicals and the pathological, but this is the core which comes up at stage 4, the proving themes at stage 3 and 4. And some curative symptoms coming up. There is calmness, there is peace and clarity, lack of anxiety, creation of a new universe. Because from the death, there is a new universe coming up, right? A new star coming up. So there is a birth and a death coming together, a sense of unity, inner strength and confidence, unstoppable power, speaking out directly. That is what she lacks. Her throat chakra is exhausted and consumed, and she needs to speak out. She needs to get on top of her anxiety and get the calmness, the peace, the clarity, and the confidence to express who she is, express her views, however weird they are. So I gave her black hole LM1. She's very sensitive, so I'm using LM potencies. This, in my experience, are one of the most frequently used potencies in my practice, with all these extremely, when you have pathology on one hand and autoimmune intense states, but at the same time, they are so deep at the core, energetically, you need a deep remedy. And I used only olfaction, only smell for the first, so that I'm testing how she's reacting to these doses. I've followed her for about 1.5 years, and I want you to see how the unfolding happens and what secondary prescriptions are needed and how do we manage these, because this is critical. The first prescription is just half the job done, remember. Let's see what's happening here.